Got it. Sorry, everybody. The screen shares messed me up. Okay, here we go. We are good now. So screen share. I told y'all, this is not my thing. Okay. All right. So now that we have done introductions, okay. Watch it. All right. So just to give y'all a recap on, and let me get it in the full setting. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the very beginning. Those people who are really good at this is probably like, what are you doing? Okay, there we go. All right. Just to let y'all give a little bit of a recap on our career fairs from the fall. Last fall, we had 125 companies in attendance and had 659 students attend the engineering and technology fair. But y'all, look at the number of appointments that were held during that time. Almost between that and the civil fair, we had almost 3,000 meetings, which we consider incredible ability for just connections between companies and students. So we appreciate that so much and appreciate all that you are doing to help these students with their career selections. So thank you for that. All right, and okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Mary Catherine to talk about, oh, before we get started with that, I did want to ask if I could get a couple of volunteers that were planted, Greg Lamoureux, to just share. Greg, if you can start and just share any tips that you have for the group in terms of ways that they can connect with the students and tips you have from doing all this in the fall virtually.
Sure. Hopefully you can all hear me. Well, on a couple of fronts, I'll share some things. Prior to the fair, one of the things we found to be very advantageous was to try to get involved with the student organizations to drive some traffic to the fair. So we worked with IEEE, ASCE, ASME in the past to drive some, get some time with them a week or so, even a couple days before the fair, to let them know who we are, try to differentiate ourselves and let them know that we'll be there. So that was one of the things that we found that really helped us. As far as the fair itself, not to steal from anybody's thunder that might be talking here in a moment, Mary Catherine or Hillary or you, April. One of the things we certainly found was that even if it's a 15-minute time slot for each candidate, and we're using 10-minute time slots, there really wasn't a lot of, obviously, time to get too deep in the details with these students. The way we're going about it, and I'm talking to all the engineering folk that we're sending to Auburn, is to really just get a high-level view on their fit, their communication skills, how we feel as though they would basically work with other people, not from a technical perspective, but from a communication and just fit perspective. After the day is done, and I have 5 people, I've already set up schedules for the fair on the 10th, and I have 5 people each with their own schedule. So an hour before the fair actually shuts, we're blocking our schedules, and we're going to get together to review all the resumes and determine who we're going to spend more time with at an upcoming interview day that we arrange. So we can go into the details about their technical ability too. So in sum, what we're looking at is, high level viewpoint on fit and their ability to fit in the culture at the organization, a huddle after the fair, immediately after the fair, because that's when everybody is available before they get back to their regular jobs, and then pushing those people that we really felt would be worth spending more time with to a following 1 or 2 interview days after the fair. And then through that process, we'd be able to pull the trigger more efficiently and quickly on some of the students that we wanted to bring on board.
That's fantastic. Great advice. Does anybody have any questions for Greg? All right. Okay. What about Medora Gaddis? Medora, are you with us? If she's been able to make it on. Anybody else who attended last semester's fair that has any advice that you'd like to share, things that worked for your company? I know you don't want to share all your trade secrets, but.
Hello?
Oh. Anybody else?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Catherine Ficklin. I'm with Air Force STEM. One thing that I did that I think worked really well is I went in the day before the fair and downloaded all the students' resumes and sent them out to my recruiter so that they can have an idea of who they were speaking to before the student actually came. So I think that was really helpful as far as asking questions and getting more information about each student and what they were looking for as far as a job.
Perfect. That's great. Great advice. Okay. Anybody else?
Hey, this is Jeannie with DIA's Missile and Space Intelligence Center. And a couple of things we did last time that were very useful is we sent an email to every student that registered for both group and individual sessions prior to the fair with attachments concerning the benefits for working for the DIA and a little bit about our mission, and just to give them some background information, because as was mentioned earlier, the 10 minutes fly by. And you really don't have all that much time. That, and we did a combination of group and individual one-on-one sessions, scheduling the group sessions early in the career fair to hopefully stimulate some interest to fill those one-to-one sessions that are not filled at the beginning of the career fair. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeannie. Great advice.
Hey, April.
Hey,
this is Medora.
Awesome.
Hey, I'm sorry about that. I was having issues with getting myself off mute, but anyway, I would definitely echo what Jeannie and Greg were talking about. You know, those 10-minute slots or even 15-minute slots go by so quickly, and you know, when you're in person, you have the luxury of kind of evaluating how many students are standing in line behind the person you're talking to. But this virtual world doesn't quite allow for that. So you've got to prioritize how you utilize your time. And, you know, some advice I would offer is, number one, I felt like students come to the virtual career fair a little bit more prepared, knowing what your company does. So you don't necessarily have to give the initial elevator speech, because they've likely, you know, already looked you up to decide who to meet with, and you can kind of jump right into questions. The second thing I would recommend is, you know, Jeannie mentioned doing kind of a combination of group versus individual. And if you don't have, you know, the capacity in your company to manage two different schedules, if you are trying to, you know, aggressively hire for specific positions, then I think the one-on-ones are great. If you're just trying to generate interest in your company and talk to as many students as possible and answer questions to kind of narrow down who might be a good fit, then I would definitely recommend the group sessions. And we're going to give the group sessions a shot this time. So
Great. All of that is great advice. I do like the idea of sending information to the students prior to help them learn a little bit more about your company so that they feel prepared. And we do reiterate to them, these are not interviews, these are meetings. So they're aware of that, but just helping them to feel prepared. So I might have stolen a little bit of Mary Catherine's thunder on that. But thank y'all for that. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Catherine to talk through what you will see as a recruiter.
Great, thank you, April, and thank you, everyone, giving good advice there. I'm happy to share my screen, and we'll kind of just walk through the recruiter side of Career Fair Plus, and just kind of like what the slide says. To reiterate, you'll receive, most of you have already gotten your emails from Career Fair Plus, either from the previous semester or if you've already received it this semester, to go ahead and make schedules. And then, of course, if you haven't got anything, you can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to send the email over to you. And let's see if we can work out the technical stuff. All right, so I think it stopped April's. We'll go over to mine. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so this will just be our demo fair here. Click into, of course, if you have multiple fairs, you'll click into which one is relevant here. Most of you are probably already familiar with this, but we'll go through just any kind of updates. And also know that I think April is going to touch on the group schedules in more detail. So you'll have the different options here. You can create your schedule. You can always create someone else's. You can invite another recruiter and then edit any kind of profile information. So if we were to go into create my schedule, again, most of you might be familiar with this, but you'll have the option of the one-on-one or the group. Go on. And I won't walk through just necessarily making them, but we'll go through just the different time slots. So we'll use one that has already been created and also has nobody signed up. Let's see. All right, so you'll see here you have all the different time slots. Looks like they're 15-minute increments. All the different types of set here in Central Time. Let's see. And of course, I think some of the tips that we'll go through later is, of course, you can always kind of like here, you can name, we suggest you naming the schedule, what you'll be hiring for, possibly location, if that's relevant to your company, different times. I'm also seeing very common now to see this where it's like a different schedule where it's a different time. And then you'll have the one-on-one. You can also now have the group where it's set for like, okay, this is, if you have multiple schedules, you can kind of go through and have different time, you know, from like 12 to 1, 1 to 2, however you think it's best. If you're going to go in here, you'll go to manage schedule to after you've already created it, go into here. And then this is, of course, you saw this just a moment ago when you actually create it and go in and create, you can always edit at any time. Let's see. I'm going to briefly touch upon, well, I'll go here real quick into the time slots. Let's see. Okay, so then here is where you'll get the breakdown, of course, of the scheduled time that should default to the schedule start time and schedule end time always default to what the career fair is set for. So in this case, it'll be from 12 o'clock Central all the way till 5 o'clock Central time. And then here, of course, is where you will get, you can set the duration of your time slots. And like Greg's already mentioned, like even if it's a 15-minute time slot, of course, the default is 10. It is very brief. So we do kind of say it's, it is like a career fair. So we're kind of simulating that situation if you were talking to people in person. You wouldn't have too much time because you have the line of people at the door, that kind of thing. So this is very similar. So you can decide to do 10 or 15 minutes. Of course, this time window, it looks like they were doing a demonstration if you were only setting for like an hour. So you'll notice here, if that's something if you wanted schedules that were set like this is a good example of where they've blocked off all the other times. And of course, if you're like, no, I will have a schedule that's set where everybody only gets, 15-minute break on the hour, then you can easily do that. Of course, we do also suggest make sure when you're making your schedules that you're going in there, giving yourself time breaks. If you have multiple recruiters for your company, you can have different schedules and break down different time slots when who's going to be there. Let's see, this question did come up. And I'll go over it, and correct me if I'm wrong, April or Hillary, but if I remember correctly, you can have multiple recruiters, of course, that have their own individual schedules, but if you have somebody who, okay, we all can't sit there on the schedule, you can always copy the link of the meeting link and send it to someone else who might need to cover the rest of the schedule. If something were to come up, where, oh my gosh, I have an emergency, I have to go run to do this. You can always go here at the top of whichever schedule it is and just copy this meeting link and send it over to whoever else might need to cover the rest of the schedule, or if you want someone else in there as well. Let's see here, if there's any other things to touch upon with this. You can edit who you'll assign to different recruiters. What that is, so that would be people who have their Career Fair Plus accounts. So these would be different recruiters that are attached to your company, and you can go in and assign whoever you need to, however many people, to different schedules within here. Let's see if there's any, and of course, I also want to say, if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to unmute or put something in the chat. Can't see it right now, but April, Hillary, if anybody has a question, please feel free to chime in, and I'm happy to answer it as we go along.
One thing I'll share, Mary Catherine, with you that I experienced today working with one of my coworkers on the recruiting side is that if you go back, actually looking at your screen there where it says Heather's schedule, name not available, versus Birmingham audit below that where it says Colby's the assigned recruiter. One thing people on the call might find is if they set up, let's just say they invite Joe or Betty to the event so that they ultimately will have a schedule. They're sending an invitation to that person to join the event. If they send that along, that person hasn't accepted that yet, but the person, in my case, me, wanted to set them up with a schedule. That can be done, but they won't necessarily, when that schedule's set up, you won't necessarily see Joe or Betty as attached to that yet. You'll see that name not available there because they haven't accepted it on their side yet. So you'll just have to, if you set up a schedule for that person, just say to them, go out there, I've sent you a notice to accept the invite. And when they do, then that will auto-populate back on that side. No matter if you select them here on that screen or not, they have to accept it first for it to show.
Okay, to show on their actual schedule name.
Yeah.
Right. And like Greg was saying, you can go in here and create someone else's schedule. And then if they didn't already have an account, if correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, if they didn't already have something and they needed to be invited, this is where you would enter it here.
Yeah.
Also like create their schedule all at one time and also like basically send their invite all at one time. But they would have to accept that and find that email themselves and go in and
you could say, just put their email in, fire it off. Then it'll ask you if you want to create a schedule for them. You can say yes and do it. And then when they accept, everything will fall into place.
Right. And let's see here. You can also, if you didn't want to go in, and it kind of depends on how everybody kind of sets up who's in charge of creating people's schedules, but you could also just invite the recruiter and then they can go in and create their own schedules because they would have the same view here. Let's see, is there anything else anybody wants to touch upon here? I will say, and I think a lot of you may already know this, that once somebody has booked on your schedule, so of course the students can start booking next Wednesday. That once even just one person starts to fill in on the schedule, you cannot make any more edits to it. Let's see. So I think even here, if we were to try to edit. See if I can. And then you can go in and still block times, but you wouldn't be able to change duration or anything like that by that point. So that's why we always highly suggest that the actual schedule itself is already set. As in terms of like time slots is what we're saying, but even still the day of, you can go in and if you don't have anything, you could block it off.
One other thing, if I can share it, because I ran into it again and others might. I mean, we're a 1,200 person engineering firm. So we have quite a big engineering department. So there's a lot of people involved. What I found today, and maybe it's something that you could comment on, Mary Catherine, if you have an answer, I couldn't find it in the program, but I created a schedule for a guy by the name of Ryan on my side. I invited him, I created a schedule, and I set it up. He, unbeknownst that I was doing that for him, set up his own.
Okay.
He had Ryan Olson EE schedule at the top. I had Ryan Olson industrial engineer alum at the bottom, both for Ryan. but I couldn't figure out a way of deleting a schedule once it's been set up. So what I did is I went into the one we're not going to use. I just renamed it do not use, so no student tries to plug in there. And
Okay.
I blocked all the time slots so no one would be able to do anything with it anyway. If I could delete that, that would be great. But for this, all intents and purposes right now, it's unusable.
And I want to say this might be something, Hillary, that we've talked about, and if somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say we'll have to go in and delete schedules if that's correct.
Yes,
A recruiter cannot delete a schedule.
that's right. Either us or Career Fair Plus support will have to go in on the back end and remove that schedule for you.
Okay.
So we'll be happy to take care of that for you, Greg.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll get with you guys afterwards.
Okay.
Thanks, Hillary.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Hi there. Can you go over how to change the name of a recruiter? Let's say they get sick the day before the career fair and we need to assign their schedule to another person.
Okay. Let's see if I can find it.
And while Mary Catherine's looking through that, if I can make one recommendation, is absolutely, you are more than welcome to attach a name to a schedule. But if you want to just do a particular position, what we found is in the fall, there was a company that named a schedule and it had a female's name attached to that schedule. And so all of the female engineers hopped on that schedule and didn't fill the other schedules that were out there. So you may run into that. Again, that's completely fine and up to you guys, but it may be so that if you don't want to have to run into that problem, maybe just name it for whatever position you're hiring for. And if you may want to put like initials on there possibly, but that may be a workaround for that as an option.
And this kind of goes back to what Greg was saying here. You'll go into the actual schedule and then you can assign whoever you would like, and then they'll get the invitation and they'll accept it, and then they'll go in and they'll accept it as their schedule. If there's somebody who's not already in here, you would go in, invite the recruiter, and then assign them by that point. So you can type in someone's email and go from there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anything else here on the recruiter side or making schedules? Any other like nitty-gritty details?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I don't know if I've missed anything. I participated in the Career Fair Plus webinar. I think it was last week. And excuse me, I attempted to go in to set up a schedule. And I guess that I need to receive an invitation from you guys first. Have you put those out? Did I miss it?
It's possible. I can look into it. Let me see. I can look into it real quick after the presentation. But yes, you'll receive an invitation from Career Fair Plus. So it's an email that is generated on their side. And then you'll go in, it provides a link, and you have to go in and make the account, or if you already have one, you'll log in, and then you'll see that you'll accept it to join this career fair.
Okay. I seem to recall, like at the end of their presentation, they said that it would also be available through Handshake. I think, I don't know if that's accurate, but I'll look for it. Send me a link.
Okay.
And Jeff, you may want to check your spam too, because sometimes it'll go to a different folder as well. But we'll be happy to resend that link to you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, let's see here. Went over. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second. So I think we went through the recruiter view. All right. Do you want me to share the presentation, April or Hillary? Go forward. Okay, great. And I can walk through this, and if anybody has questions, I can share my screen again. So with selecting majors and prerequisites, this might be where a Career Fair Plus was mentioning Handshake. We do, the reason we have y'all register through Handshake is because Handshake and Career Fair Plus do talk to each other. The main portion where they talk to each other is actually the registration information. So we mentioned like the majors and the prereqs, simply just to understand on both sides of what is actually pulling from your registration over into Career Fair Plus, and then what students are seeing. And then when you're also doing the prerequisites for your schedules. So in Handshake, there was 2 different options available. You can actually go in and if you chose to, of course, most of you have already registered, but just so you understand what's pulling, you had the option, of course, of selecting either major groups or individual majors if you were real particular about which type of engineering majors you were trying to recruit. What we noticed here is that in Handshake itself, because it has all of the Auburn related majors and also everything else is lumped in, major groups would have probably about, I think one of the big ones had like 24 majors that follow underneath it. But then there's also the option of like selecting individual majors. So what happens in Career Fair Plus is it pulls over into the company profile portion. So that's what students may pull up on their student side and see that, okay, I'm interested in this specific company. And then they'll see there under the profile, oh, okay, great, they do recruit my major. But then what could potentially happen is that in the actual schedule, perhaps a prerequisite wasn't selected, or like no prerequisites were selected or anything like that. So to avoid confusion, one of the easiest things for registering on the Handshake portion would be to select which individual majors that you are interested in recruiting. And then by selecting any correct majors that you do need to recruit for your company, it pulls over that information onto the company profile side, and then also ensuring that you're selecting the prerequisite majors on the schedules itself so that they're matching and that students aren't getting confused on like, okay, oh my gosh, does this company hire this in this major, or like anything like that. So just kind of avoid that confusion there. In April, I'm happy to walk through, so I might share my screen again to go through the prereqs and also more information about prereqs as well.
All right, and I would also say with the prereqs, try to be as broad as possible with that. Like we have at Auburn, we have a major called Biosystems Engineering. And in Biosystems Engineering, they really work on sustainability, like in food, water, energy, and the environment. So if your company is geared towards that at all, you would want to consider keeping your prereqs wide enough to where biosystems could be included. So we just don't, I just don't want y'all to miss out on a great candidate who might not fit into what you think should be there, but after talking to them, you realize that their major would apply and their experience. So just make sure to try to keep it as broad as possible, unless you have just hard requirements of we only want a 3.5 GPA or whatever that is, but just know that that might preclude you getting some great candidates.
And to go with the prerequisites, oh, I'm sorry, was somebody asking a question?
I think somebody was just saying they're going to have to hop off. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry, so we'll go into schedules again. So if you're, while you're making the schedules, we went over the time slots and everything, go into manage the schedules and schedule details. This is where you would select if you choose to use prerequisites. And this is where it gives the breakdown. You can have the different majors. Let's see if I can pull up aerospace engineering, anything like that. And this also, just like April was saying, you'll set a minimum GPA, and we do like to say try to keep it as broad as possible, because if you have like a hard deadline of like a 3.0, but then if there's a student who has like a 2.99, well, they're also still a great student. So just keep in mind with the prerequisites that, and going off of what was mentioned earlier, like what might be showing in your profile and what was selected at the Handshake registration point, just be sure that everything is kind of lining up and try to keep those prerequisites as broad as possible. And just going in, and if you're like, oh, I'm a company, like we need these specific type of things, just ensure that you, again, sorry, being broad as possible, but then also like as you're starting to get closer to the time of the career fair, and you're once the schedule window opens and everything for students, you're seeing like, one suggestion might be, if you're starting to see that you're not getting many people signing up, is to be possibly broaden the prerequisites from that point. So that would be a good suggestion there. And let's see.
Mary Catherine, this is Greg again. I have a question on the prerequisites. Could you
Go
go
ahead.
back to that screen for a moment?
Yeah, sure thing.
Because I'm getting asked this question and it's a good one.
Sure.
If I were to go, if you click on major there,
Mhm.
and select, type in the word civil, and hit enter to find civil engineering. Maybe you have to type in engineering. You should be able to find that.
Well, I think because we're in like an accounting demo.
Oh,
with College
okay.
of Business, I don't think
Okay.
it's gonna pull up those majors.
All right, then just go down to any other like degree level or something like that.
Yeah, let's see.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. And think about that portion. It's all counting.
Go to degree level there and select a couple in there. Let's see what's in the list. Type in are there multiple or school year? Yeah. If you select bachelor's, select master's. So if you save that now, does that mean anybody who has an associate's degree, because you did not select it, will not be able to sign up for that schedule? In other words, is that criteria looked at as as limiting who can sign up for that schedule? Because in our case, we're interested more so in civil and electrical, but not necessarily mechanical. If we didn't select mechanical, does that mean someone with a mechanical engineering degree will not be able to sign up for that schedule? Or they could, we're just hoping that they won't.
If I understand the question correctly. If you didn't have prerequisites enabled, basically anybody could sign up. But if you're
Okay.
selecting prerequisites, so you're right, if someone who didn't have an associate or someone who did not have a bachelor's or master's or was not in that range, they would not be able to sign up for the schedule.
Okay, so along with school year, if you selected 1 year and that person did not happen to be a graduate of that year, or if they weren't a senior, you selected senior, but they were another class, they would not be able to schedule.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
So if you
That's what
just
I need.
wanted, if you only wanted civil and electricals and no mechanicals, then you would put that as your prerequisites, and no mechanical engineer would be able to sign up.
Okay, it was unclear to me as to whether or not that was actually what would limit them, or it's just a suggestion. We'd like to not speak with you, because I think last year we had a lot of mechanicals and we were learning this whole thing just like everyone was for the first time.
Mhm.
And we didn't know if that limited them or if it was just one of those things that we were hoping they wouldn't select it, but to try to show up, if that makes sense.
It does limit them from being
Okay,
able to sign
good.
up.
Good,
Now,
thank
I
you.
will have to put a little caveat that they can say what their major is.
Yes, right. And maybe that's what we saw.
Yeah, so a lot of them have figured that little piece out, and may
Right.
say that they're majoring in electrical and mechanical engineering. They'll have 4 majors. It's amazing.
Right.
They're brilliant.
That's probably what we ran into.
Yeah, that makes the interview a lot shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Okay. All right, let's see with this part. Okay. Any other questions about scheduling or prereqs or anything along those lines? I'm happy to move on to the next portion, April, if you are.
Want to do it. There we go. Okay.
Okay, so like gonna be given tips throughout most of it, but these are just a few kind of before day of little steps here. Just make sure that you're logging in, like once the schedule opens, all that kind of stuff, like log in to your account, view your meetings, make sure the schedule is what you want it to be. A few people gave suggestions like this at the beginning. Browse profiles and resumes of candidates. I know some of you said like you would email them ahead of time, whichever you think is best for y'all's workflow. So it's best just kind of have a brief idea of who will be meeting with you, so you can kind of go ahead and get to the highlights once you're within that like 10 minute or 15-minute window. Or like I mentioned before, if you still want to block off times that are available, you know, the day before, the day of, to like avoid being blocked up, you can still go into the manage schedule, edit time slots, and block off times. But with that said, you if somebody actually books the time slots, even just one person on your schedule, you cannot make any other, you can't change the actual minutes anymore of the time windows. So like the 10 or 15 minutes, 5 minutes, but you can still block off times. And then also another thing, I threw this in here just of what we kind of learned from last semester. So I'd highly recommend, especially if you're going to be using Career Fair Plus's video services and not having like an external link, be sure that you're going in and checking the video prior to the actual career fair, just to ensure to, and I see here that the recommended browsers are Chrome or Safari, just to ensure that if there are any technical problems, you can reach out to Career Fair Plus support. So if it's like a technical, like a company firewall type of thing, something like that, you can go ahead and reach out to Career Fair Plus and they can assist you with that. So highly suggest just going in there and checking that ahead of time. And then we can go to the next thing here, April. And if anybody have any questions about that there. Let's see here, and just a few more suggestions. Yeah, just keep a close eye on your schedules. Students can still add themselves to employer meetings the day of the event. So just make sure that, you know, probably the day before and the day of, you're going to see possibly a bunch of changes, people moving around their time slots. Of course, we try to encourage them not to do that, but you might see some of that, especially the day of, people booking throughout the event as well. So just stay on top of the schedule throughout the event, and especially as we're getting closer. Let's see, and yeah, once you actually sit the day of, you'll just go into the venting room. You'll just, as times hit, you'll get the little knock, and it actually sounds like a knock. You'll just sit back and wait for candidates to enter, and then you can bring them in. So they're automatically set in a waiting room itself, and you'll hear an actual verbal knock, and then they can enter in. And here's another little nice tip here too. If you want to download the Career Fair Plus app to go alongside with the desktop version, of course, we always highly suggest to do the video portion on a desktop. You can set private notes, ratings for candidates, and then you can also export this information at the end. So if there's anything, if you're trying to make decisions on next day interview type of information, this is a good way to jot little notes down if you're also using the app while using the desktop version. All right. And I think April, if you wanted to highlight on this.
Okay, so we are offering next day interviews. You do have to sign up for it separately through Handshake. I think it's $50 to participate in the next day interviews. Now, the platform is not generally made for interviews, so but we did want to offer this. So what I would suggest for those who want to do next day interviews through this app is that you would set up your schedule. You're going to set up the timing, the breaks, everything just like you would the career fair, except we're going to make it longer periods of time, of course, and which video service would be used if you're using the Career Fair Plus video service or an external link. But after the fair, you will be responsible for contacting your candidates that you wish to interview and have them sign up for their schedules. Then we will need you to email me your schedule, because Hillary and I and Mary Catherine the next day will be double checking to make sure that no students who are not on your supposed to be on your schedule sign up for an interview with you. That would be a big surprise to you and to them that they're not supposed to be there. Problem, maybe not to them if they do it, but to you. So we don't want that to happen. So you will need to make sure that you email us your schedule and the candidates so that we can ensure that no candidates get on your schedule who are not supposed to be there. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions about that? All right. Okay, Hillary, you're up.
All right. Okay, Medora talked about this briefly earlier. If you'll remember in the fall, if you attended the career fair, we had drop-in rooms. Those rooms were really not managed. Anybody could drop in at any time. As far as security, there was really no way to set prerequisites or to go back and view the students that dropped into your room. Career Fair Plus listened to feedback that companies had about that and made a couple changes. So it is now called group meetings. And we recommend this for really a branding opportunity to host an information session during the career fair. You can have up to 50 students, so it's not one-on-one, it would be more of a group setting. With this, you can add different schedules. So if you want several different group meetings to happen throughout the career fair, you can set up different schedules for that. You are not able to block off time. So if you, on the one-on-one time slots, as we were talking about earlier, you could block off 15 minutes or a lunch break. With these, you cannot. So just something to think about as you're going through and doing it. Students, they can book it at any point during the career fair. So there's not a cutoff time. So during the career fair, as long as that group meeting is populated, they can hop in at any point during that group meeting. Now you will be able to lock your room. So if you get to a point where you feel like you've got enough students, you really don't want anybody else jumping in at that time, or the presentation has started, you can certainly go in and lock the room. Again, this is something that we feel like is great for freshmen and sophomores to be targeted towards, because a lot of times they'll get on, they want to learn more about your company, see what positions are available for them, and it's good for practice going forward. So this would be something to help brand and get your name out there, host an information session. Another new item to Career Fair Plus is employer videos. So you can now go in and upload a 2-minute video about your company or about the positions that you're hiring for through Career Fair Plus, and students can view that through your profile. So as you upload information, you will have that option. And then as students are going through and searching to learn more about your company and your company culture, you can go in and upload those videos for them to view. So that's a new added bonus. We know it's hard during a virtual career fair to brand yourself. You don't have all the banners and all the swag and all the other important items that you would have during an in-person fair. So we think this is a great addition and really helps give students that quick glimpse into your company. All right. Okay, here are a couple employer tips. Again, from hosting this in the fall, we came up with some tips of our own, and then we had a focus group where employers graciously gave feedback to us about things that went well, things we could improve upon. So we wanted to share that information with you guys. As you know, students start signing up February the 3rd. So we have found it's very important to have those schedules set by February the 2nd, because once that date hits, students are normally, we're encouraging them to log on that day, because as you know, schedules can fill up. So please try to ensure that those schedules are set by February the 2nd if you can. If you have questions or need help, please reach out. We're more than happy to walk through that with you guys. Be cognizant of your meeting schedule. Students cannot book back-to-back appointments, but you can on the employer side. So just keep in mind, there may be students in your waiting room. So just keep that time frame for whatever time you allow, those time slots, just keep that in mind as you're going throughout the day. We recommend starting with 1 to 3 schedules. You can add to that. If you see February 3rd, February 6th, whatever that date is that you're getting booked up and you would like to add an additional schedule, you can always add more schedules. So don't feel like you've got to go in there and have 10 different schedules to begin this process. You will be able to add as you go. Naming your schedule. We talked about this a little bit. So if you name it for the position, whether it's full-time, internship, if you want to put, like Mary Catherine said, the location, those are great ways so students know that they're entering the correct meeting with your company, and they know exactly what that meeting will be about. Group meetings, again, great way for an information session to really brand your company. Be as broad as possible on the prerequisites. We have had several companies that went back and were like, man, I wish I wouldn't have had that GPA at that certain level, or it cut off a lot of people, or the freshman and sophomore aspect of it. It's nice to keep that open, again, for them to learn more about your company, especially in these group meetings. That would be something I would really think about as you're setting those up. Our students love to reach out and thank you and send thank you notes after the career fair. And so they're always, if they're not able to get it because it is such a quick turnaround, they'd love it if you would provide contact information or LinkedIn information. Again, they like to reach out and just tell you thank you for your time. So we had that come up a lot in the fall of students really wanting to reach out, but not having any way to follow back up because they just forgot to get that information. So something to think about. If you're using a program other than Career Fair Plus for different video meetings on your schedule, you can indicate that prior to make sure that you have your, that your student has downloaded the correct platform so that there's no technical difficulties or they're trying to download it during your 15-minute time frame and you run out of time. We had that happen on several occasions where a different platform was being used, but the student wasn't made aware of that ahead of time. So they had to download, and it eventually worked out, but just to eliminate that and make that process a little smoother, if you may want to reach out to those and let them know that you're going to be using a different platform. And that is all I have on the tips.
All right, so I wanted to share one, first of all, does anybody have any questions before we get started?
Yes, this is Lonnie Sue Sutton from United Launch Alliance.
Hey, Lonnie Sue.
Hi, I'm working with my IT department because I think I'm blocked from it because it has some Google access. I don't know what's going on, so still having trouble. But do we build a virtual booth? Is there a place to upload our logos and our kind of our marketing look and feel to brand it, the virtual booth?
It doesn't exactly look like a booth, but it is, your logo will be pulled in from Handshake. So all of that information that's on Handshake will be pulled in, including your company profile that's on Handshake. So you might want to look at that profile to make sure it's what you want to be conveyed, that's already on Handshake, and then all of that information will be pulled in.
So if when I was building my company profile, I put in mechanical, aerospace, and those kinds of things. You're saying if we have job postings for those on Handshake, it will automatically do that?
It won't pull in the job postings, but it will pull in your profile, if that makes sense. And yeah, Mary Catherine, tell me if I'm wrong on any of this.
Yeah, that's correct. It pulls in like the registration information, but it won't show job postings. That correct?
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. One last thing that I wanted to share before we finish is hold on. Let me do my share screen again. Y'all are probably like, oh no, she's going to try to share a screen again. See if I can get it to pull up. Let's see. See if I can find which one. Here we go. This came from Career Fair Plus today to us, and had this what employers should look for in candidates at virtual fairs. And so it's a blog. So if y'all are good with this, I'll send this out to everybody. But it's just a good way to and they have a lot of different blogs that you can look at through their app or through their website that are very, very helpful to you as you're planning and learning about the platforms. So I think that would be great to look at, and I will send that out to everybody afterwards along with the recording from today. Right. Anything else before we go? Okay, I hope this was helpful to everybody, and we just appreciate, most of all, we appreciate the fact that you've chosen Auburn to recruit from our students. We're proud of them, and we hope that they will make great assets to your company. So thank you so much, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
I appreciate it. It's very well put together.
Thank you
Very much.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good afternoon.
You too.